Thank you, Thibaut and Mark, for inviting me for one. I don't have as many slides, but let's see, where am I? Okay. So yeah, I'm going to just start talking about the beginning of the season there. Trying to focus my talk on the beginning of the season through the end of grand growth, which is very difficult last year because there was some overlap in where grand period of growth ended and where Raison started. That said, I'll give you a little bit of background, just on some probably similar data that Rob and Thibaut have been giving you, but maybe a little bit different perspective, but maybe not different perspective. Okay. Sorry, I'm getting used to this thing up here. We talked about rainfall. You know about rainfall. I don't need to tell you what happened last year with rainfall. The thing I wanted to stress, though, is it doesn't really matter to me what it does in January and what it does in February, viticulturally at least. I mean, obviously it matters to erosion, it matters to flooding, that matters to filling up reservoirs. But viticulturally, it doesn't really matter. But what really does matter to me each and every year, and this year may be a little different, but most every year, is what happens in March, April, in the springtime. So the rainfall we get in the springtime is the most impactful to me, especially since my focus is highly about water management. And so, we have our soil profiles they'll hold maybe a foot of water or so, plus or minus. So if we're getting, which are typical around here, 24 to 30 something inches of rain, we're always starting out with a full profile. Even this year, we're looking like we have a full profile after the last set of rains we had, but it was getting a little sketchy. So to me, it really matters what we get in the springtime as far as our rainfall, because that does make our lives a little more challenging. Typically, we don't irrigate here in the North Coast. Most of our vineyards aren't irrigated until much later into either late spring or summertime. Some are not irrigated at all. But it's always very difficult to control our water status of the vines if it's raining. And of course, in April last year, it did rain substantial amount. Shown here. This is a weather station. I believe this is the one in Chalk. It's in Chalk Hill, or at least it's a vineyard off of Chalk Hill Road. So I'm a big follower and believer in soil moisture monitoring, and this is just a chart, I believe, yes, of soil moisture. This is the average soil moisture from 0 to 48 inches where the soil, so I'm not looking at individual levels, but I'm looking at individual years. So I'm going to do a lot of comparisons from year to year just to kind of show you that. It makes it a little easier for me to put a vintage into context if we have the other vintages adjacent to it to look at. And so this is the total water content, and I hope this works. And if you haven't seen these before, this is relative water content. So the numbers aren't specifically that important, but it's wetter up and it's drier down. And this is over time. And so you could just, I don't know how well the colors are showing up here, but 2017 is in red, and it's this line here. So this is the April rains, and you see it continued to fill up the profile. Essentially at 80, that's roughly field capacity for this particular soil. Yep. Okay. And you can see that it obviously was wetter than the other years we've had. And so what's that going to do? Well, the vines are going to grow more. And as Thibaut said, more water availability, higher nitrogen availability is going to cause more growth. And it really wasn't until here, which is about sometime mid-June, where they started to come together as far as the years all kind of converged. But all that time up to June, the vines were pretty happy and pretty fat, happy and growing pretty rapidly. We got here, what I have here, I'll try to bring this up here quickly because I'm going to run out of time. I know this is kind of behaving strangely. Hello. Okay, there we go. This is this is a site in Green Valley, by the way. This other slide, the one before, it's the same site. It's in Green Valley. So it's a vineyard we don't irrigate until August typically, which is what's happening here. And this is the various levels, and you can see at the various points. This is the 8-inch depth. That's about where the water became less available and started. So you can see that inflection point. and that happens here and here, and so it starts shallow. Eventually, the lower depths start running out of moisture. The water becomes more difficult to obtain, and then the vine gets more stressed. Well, the lower profile depths, the 40 and 48 inches, really didn't start to slow down until August. So that water was just there, and this is a Goldridge soil, so it does hold water fairly, not really well. So it's a sandy loam, but it's fairly deep. What I do want to show is the water status of the vines. This is plant water status over time, and this is the same vineyard. And so that blue line here is, I believe, that's leaf water potential, and this orangey line is stomatal conductance. And I drew here the targets that we're looking for, and they actually didn't turn out the same as where I wanted them to be. That was a little lower, and that one's a little higher. But anyway, the idea is that we really didn't hit our targets until August. So that means we didn't irrigate, but we had trouble getting these vines to slow down. And that was pretty much true throughout the county. This is the same. This is the leaf water potential chart, and this right here is our shoot tip rating. So we look at the shoot tips, and when it's a 5, it's rapidly growing. When it's slowing down, we're talking a 3. And you see that. So you see that the shoot tips did not slow down until August, and so they went right past veraison, which is somewhere. Well, I think I showed it right here, and they kept growing, and that was very difficult to control the vine growth. So what else happened? We had trouble containing our canopies. I gotta find a place to stop here. We had dense canopies. We had trouble getting them done because we had labor problems because of labor is a problem, and just getting around to our canopy management was very difficult. So what happened is we had mildew, a lot of mildew last year, and that's a photo that towards the end of the season of some Chardonnay. I didn't manage that. That's just a picture I took. Trust me. I hear this year in, year out. This is the worst mildew year ever, right? You can't say that every year, right? Well, we've been saying that every year. If you look at this, I only have a couple more slides here on this side of the talk. These red lines, this is the average mildew index. This is the Gubler index, and this is that Chalk Hill vineyard I was telling you about. It's not any higher than any other year. In fact, it's lower. And if you look at this is an average over the month. And this is the maximum over the month. So again, these red lines are not any higher than the recent year. So it wasn't the worst mildew year ever environmentally, but it was a very bad mildew year, and partially because it was difficult to control the canopy density. Getting sunlight into the interior of the canopy was very difficult. But also, I think I can't leave this floor without saying I think we're starting to get resistance. We are starting to get resistance to some of our fungicides. Some of the best or least mildew canopies I saw were organic vineyards, who are using sulfur, or sulfur oils, and some of the others who do not have the resistance we're getting with some of the synthetics. I'm not a proponent of anything specifically. I do both, organic and conventional, but I do believe we need to be cognizant of that. I think I'll take a break now and let Tio get.
One question?
Yeah.
Sort of coming back to your statement about winter rain doesn't matter. We in the drought years of 14, 15, 16, we saw in Lake County on volcanic soils, we saw really early bud break, particularly Cabernet Sauvignon.
Okay.
Our explanation for it was heat capacity of the soils being lower. So I mean that's why Riesling pushes sooner in the Rheingau, right? So and then I'm not sure that our data correlates completely with this, but it did seem like things got sort of back to normal in 17, where we got a later bud break. And so for us, as your slide showed, all that water in March was a catastrophe in terms of set and yield and vine balance and everything else, because we had persistent calyptra, we had lousy seed number, lousy set, and I just wonder you know so much more about all this. What do you think are the factors that affect when the vine decides to get going in the spring, and in particular, why on earth does it affect Cabernet Sauvignon so much more than Cabernet Franc and Merlot?
Oh, you had to add that last one. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
sorry about that.
Thanks, Clark. I mean, I do agree with you that the dry soil is going to cause earlier bud break, and primarily because of the warmer soil. I do agree with you that water itself has a high water heat capacity, high heat capacity, and so lack of water and more airspace is going to warm the soil deeper. And that's kind of what was happening this year until we had the more recent rains and the cooler weather. A lot of buds were starting to swell, and they still are. That definitely is. I don't mean to dismiss the winter rain. It's definitely important. And if you look at other regions, Lake County is a little different than Sonoma, and Paso Robles or in the Central Coast is extremely different. And it's much more arid. And yeah, yeah. So I do believe that soil temperature has a lot to do with when bud break occurs, but above ground temperature has a lot to do with it as well. And so does nitrogen status and what have you. I don't know if I can answer the question quantitatively, but qualitatively, a drier soil is going to cause an earlier bud break. And yeah, and I think a lot of these early bud breaks are causing problems with fruit set. And we're getting into the crappier weather of the spring before the spring has a chance to settle out. And we're getting these problems with fruit set. We've had it for several years. That wasn't a super good answer. I don't know the Cabernet thing. I'll have to think about.